Welcome to our channel. Today we will embark on a fascinating journey to discover the Minoan civilization, the first great civilization in Europe. Have you ever imagined what life was like on the island of Crete more than 4,000 years ago? What were their customs, beliefs, and how did they influence the ancient world? Get ready to immerse yourself in a story full of mysteries, mythology, and cultural legacy. Stay until the end to find out what the Minoans can still teach us today. The Minoan civilization, one of the most fascinating and mysterious civilizations of antiquity, emerged during the Greek Bronze Age on Crete, the largest island in the Aegean Sea, and flourished approximately between the 30th and 15th centuries BC. Crete is a mountainous island with natural harbors. Composed of mountain ranges, plains, and rain valleys, it is dominated by three large mountain ranges: the White Mountains to the west, with a maximum altitude of 2,452 meters; Mount Ida, or Salaridi, in the center, with 2,490 meters; and the Dictys Mountains to the east, with 2,148 meters, in addition to other mountains of lower altitude. Situated in a seismic zone, it has suffered earthquakes throughout its history and continues to be under threat. It was rediscovered in the early 20th century during the archaeological expeditions of the British historian Arthur Evans. The historian Will Durant refers to the civilization as the first link in the European chain. The first signs of human occupation in Crete date back to the Neolithic period, at least 128,000 BC during the Middle Paleolithic, but it was during the early Bronze Age that the Minoans began to build the settlements that would become the foundations of their civilization. However, the first signs of agricultural practices did not appear until 5000 BC, which is when the civilization began. With the introduction of copper around 2700 BC, the manufacture of bronze was made possible. Their development is generally divided into three main phases, based on cultural, political, and architectural characteristics: the ancient or prepalatial phase, the middle or protopalatial and neopalatial phase, and the final or postpalatial phase. Each of these phases tells a fascinating part of the Minoan story, revealing how a civilization can emerge, prosper, and eventually decline. The ancient phase marks the beginnings of Minoan civilization, when Crete began to transform from a simple agricultural society into a more complex and organized culture. This period corresponds to the beginning of the Bronze Age on the island, and settlements were relatively small and scattered, with no centralized structure. The island's first inhabitants lived in caves and over time began to build small villages and stone buildings. On the coast, there were fishermen's huts, while the fertile Masara plain was used for agriculture. They cultivated wheat and lentils, raised cattle and goats, and made weapons from bones, horns, obsidian, hematite, sandstone, limestone, and serpentine. The middle period, from 2000 BC to 1450 BC, is widely considered the peak of the Minoan civilization. Crete's geographical location played a crucial role in the development of the Minoan civilization. Situated between Europe, Asia, and Africa, the island served as a strategic point of cultural and commercial exchange. The Minoans developed navigational techniques that allowed them to explore and trade with various regions of the Eastern Mediterranean, including Egypt and the Levant. They used fast, well-built wooden boats that were capable of transporting goods such as jewelry, ceramics, olive oil, and wool. In addition, the Minoans used celestial navigation, using the stars to navigate accurately at sea. This technique allowed them to reach busy ports and establish important trade routes. The combination of efficient boats and advanced navigational techniques made the Minoans one of the most successful maritime civilizations of their time, dominating trade in the Eastern Mediterranean, which not only enriched the Minoans, but also facilitated the exchange of ideas and technologies, such as the development of writing systems The linear A being an intriguing example that, although still not fully deciphered, indicates an advanced society with a need for documentation for administrative purposes. They had a decimal numerical system based on the Egyptian one, but different from it, reaching only a few thousand. They had also developed a percentage system. They had knowledge of astronomy used for agriculture and navigation, geometry for building construction, mechanics, plumbing, sewage technology, and land reclamation. As a result of the intense commercial exchanges undertaken by the Minoans, they developed a system of weights and measures in which copper ingots and gold discs with determined weights were used. This system was used by artisans and merchants to determine the value of goods. It was during this period that the first monumental palaces were built, marking the emergence of a more complex and centralized society. The first palaces, such as those of Knossos, Festus, Malea, and Zakros, emerged during this phase and were not only royal residences, but also administrative, economic, and religious centers. At the top of the hierarchy was the king named Minos, who had administrative and legislative power. Below were the nobles and members of the royal family who formed the court and possibly had advisory power. There were also specialized officials such as scribes who possibly used, in addition to clay, papyrus from Egypt, and the collectors of agricultural and manufactured goods who exercised bureaucratic power. In the priestly sphere, there were men and women. The rest of the population occupied themselves with agricultural production, manufacturing of products. There were workshops in the palaces, and internal and external trade. There were possibly slaves in Minoan society. The occupations of Cretan women varied from participation in solemn festivals and religious ceremonies to more modest household duties. Women played various roles such as hunters, boxers, bullfighters, priestesses, etc. Board games and sports, boxing, racing, gladiatorial combats, and bullfights were their pastimes. The Minoans also enjoyed gatherings, theater, dance, and music. Cretan dance had a religious character. Archaeological discoveries indicate that the Minoans were already familiar with the lyre, flute, and trumpet. The artistic characteristics of this period are marked by sophistication and naturalism. The Minoans were passionate about the arts and nature. Among the artistic representations are religious processions, marine animals, dolphins, fish, octopus, land animals, lions, cats, monkeys, and flying animals, birds, flowers and other botanical representations, scenes of boxing and other forms of fighting, bullfighting, jumping over bulls, mythological beings, griffins and gods, people of society, litters, etc. The faces of the men were painted red, while those of the women were painted white. These images were not merely decorative. They reflected the Minoans' deep respect for nature and the harmony of life. Another fascinating aspect is the pottery. The Kamari's vases, with their fluid designs and abstract patterns, are true examples of how the Minoans combined functionality and beauty. In addition, the jewelry and sculptures in precious metals reveal a meticulous attention to detail, demonstrating the value given to aesthetics and symbolism. The term Minoan was coined by Arthur Evans, a British archaeologist, and derives from the name of the mythical king Minos. Minos was an important figure in Greek mythology, known as the legendary king of the island of Crete. He was the son of Zeus and Princess Europa, and his story is shrouded in fascinating legends. Minos is famous for his wisdom and justice, and is considered an exemplary lawgiver. In the legend, he orders the construction of a labyrinth to imprison the Minotaur, a creature half man, half bull. This myth may reflect religious practices involving the bull as a divine symbol. In addition, Minos is remembered as one of the judges of the underworld, alongside Rhadamanthus and Aeacus, deciding the fate of souls in Hades. His figure is a symbol of power and authority in Greek mythology. Fascinating, isn't it? Due to mythology, many scholars have spent years trying to discover the location of the famous Minotaur labyrinth. Recent research has shown that the cave of Scotinus, 12 kilometers from Knossos, is the real labyrinth. Used to subject young people to initiation trials, its underground galleries descend to a depth of 55 meters and are arranged in 4 levels with breaks between levels and dead ends. Along the way, there are carved limestone blocks representing monstrous heads. At the end of the circuit, there is a stone altar. The religion was apparently matriarchal. One of the central figures in Minoan religion is the mother goddess, often associated with fertility, rebirth, and abundance. She is depicted in frescoes and statuettes, often holding serpents or surrounded by animals, symbolizing her dominion over nature and life. Some scholars believe that the Minoan mother goddess influenced later representations of Greek goddesses, such as Demeter and Artemis. The bull god played a powerful symbolic role in Minoan religion. He was seen as a symbol of strength, fertility, and power. Other lesser gods may have represented specific aspects of nature, such as mountains, rivers, and forests. These deities were often honored in open-air locations, such as sanctuaries in natural locations, springs, caves, mounds, or in palaces, and these were very different from those developed later by the Greeks. Although many details remain shrouded in mystery, it is clear that their beliefs and legends played a central role in shaping their cultural identity, whether through their powerful gods, their enigmatic rituals, or the stories that influenced later Greek myths. The decline and subsequent end of the Minoan civilization is unknown, but it is believed that the catastrophic eruption of the volcano on the island of Santorini, ancient Thera, around 1600 BC, was one of the main factors. This eruption was one of the largest in history and caused devastating tsunamis that hit Crete, as well as releasing volcanic ash that may have damaged agriculture and the climate of the region. The physical destruction and economic impact were significant, weakening the civilization. Furthermore, there is evidence that the Minoans faced invasions by Mycenaean peoples from the Greek mainland. The more militarized Mycenaeans may have taken advantage of the Minoans' weakness after natural disasters to conquer the island and take control of its urban and commercial centers. Now that we've explored the world of the Minoans, from their impressive constructions to the mysteries surrounding their decline, what do you find most intriguing about this civilization? The Minoans show us how creativity and cultural advancement can shape history. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. And remember, the past always has something valuable to teach us. Until next time.